Okay, welcome to another edition of SAC TV's Between the Lines. And in there we go and we look through the local newspapers over the last couple of days and especially today to see what topics are being covered here in and around Schenectady. We have our special guest today, Roger Hull, who is a candidate running for office of mayor of the city of Schenectady. And we're going to get some insight today on Roger's opinions of some of these issues that are coming up. And I'd like to start right away, Roger, with on the front page of today's Gazette, the city planners held closed meetings. And Bob Friedman made a comment, it may be illegal, but it does not represent the best possible way to be accountable to the public.
Well, first of all, Randall, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Secondly, I think you meant to say it's legal, but it's not the best way to do things.
Did I say illegal?
I think you may have.
All right.
In any case, my feeling very simply is anytime you do business, it should be open business. You do not hide behind any laws, and you do not try in any way to skirt the law. And the best way I can address something like that is on my past history, because it's always great to be able to say things, but it's far better to be able to prove the things you actually have done. When I ran Union College, when I ran Beloit College, when I run any organization, what I've always sought to do is to have things done as openly as possible. I used to say, and it was fact, that I never knew information that those who worked with me or those who were part of the faculty or the students or the staff did not also know. And we discuss things openly and honestly, and in my mind, that's the best way to do things, whether you're running a private college or you're running a city.
So you feel, for example, that it's, as Bob Friedman said, it's not in the best interest of the public to have them excluded from meetings and involved in situations like this, which is a major project that's going on here in the city of Schenectady. I always felt personally that, I'm speaking on behalf of myself, if it's a good deal for the people, it's still a good deal after all the facts are out in the open.
Well, I agree with you, but I'd say it perhaps a little bit differently, that sunshine is the best disinfectant.
Yes. And we agree with that. I've had a lot of dealings with Bob Friedman over the years with regard to open meetings law and whatever. And what you don't want to see happen is you don't want to see an organization put together meetings in secret to avoid dealing and engaging with the public, especially a public commission like city planners. And also in today's paper, connected to the same story in a way, is the mayor of Schenectady doing a guest column for the Schenectady Gazette, and says casino deal better than Seneca host package. And in here, what I found very interesting, I'd like to get your comment on this. It says the new casino in Schenectady does not include any IDA benefits, period. The River Casino and Resort in Schenectady is paying 100% of sales tax, 100% of mortgage recording tax, and 100% of property tax. And then it goes on to talk about how much money it's going to generate and so on. Have you seen a contract that quotes these kind of numbers?
Not only have I not seen a contract, but I've certainly not seen these contracts. So I have no knowledge. I'd be surprised if anyone came to New York State without some type of an inducement. So it was surprising to read that. I mean, it's written as an authoritative piece. It is an opinion piece, but of course it would be good to see what his opinions are based on. I don't know if the Gazette reporter Haley Vaccaro has seen the agreement with Rush Gaming or the agreement with the Galisi Group. But certainly based on that statement, I would hope that you would look at it.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, I would hope that if they make this like an authoritative statement, that they actually do have a contract or an agreement that would back it up and they make it available to the public. Because it looks very, it doesn't quote where he's getting these numbers from, whether or not it's his opinion or whatever. It's saying here that they have a definitive agreement that shows these kind of numbers. Well, I think we'd like to see that.
I'm sure everyone would.
Now, moving on from that, we have a couple of other issues that we would like to bring up. But once again, we're going in only in today's paper, which is kind of amazing to me, that you can pick up a daily paper and have so much material.
Well, it's because the
In there.
Gazette is so authoritative.
Well, they've covered. Foreclosure activity continues to rise, and as you know, there was an article previously, I forget which paper it was in, but they quoted the numbers of Schenectady having 700 some odd abandoned or distressed properties at one point, and now I believe it's up even higher according to the last article. And Schenectady County reported 55 foreclosure filings, up 139% from April, and this is 358% from 1 year earlier. 350% increase in foreclosures from the previous year.
It's a stunning number, and I think what is so sad for those of us who live here, and whether we are homeowners or renters, we're all affected by tremendously high taxes, which are the highest in the Capital District. My last calculation, it's roughly 5% when you include fees. And I know when, for instance, the garbage fee came into play back in the first years of the Stratton administration, it was said to be a fee, not a tax. Tell a taxpayer that there's a distinction between a fee and a tax. There certainly isn't when you end up paying it, except that if you happen to be a homeowner, you don't get to deduct the fee on your tax return, whereas taxes are deductible. So it's disingenuous. So we're paying roughly 5% of our assessed value. And we're doing it on properties that are falling in value. So people are fleeing this city. They're not coming in. And we have programs such as the mayor has announced that are there to try and bring people in. Mm-hmm. And some distressed properties are being sold. But the fact of the matter is, people who can are trying to leave. And that's evidenced by the fact that there are more and more foreclosed properties.
So if I said to you, for example, in Schenectady, I want to sell you a property that's currently being taxed at 1.21 or 121% of its value, and that it's lost 20% value over the last 4 years. Does that sound like an incentive?
No. In fact, one of the things I found stunning is for the mayor to talk about the fact that our taxes may be high, but our property values are low. What he is saying, in effect, is invest in this community because the values are low. What he is not saying is they will be lower based on what's happened in the last 4 years. So you're paying roughly 5% of your assessed value, which, as you said, is 101% of the real value, and your values are going down, not up. That is not something that most people would seek to do.
You know, a lot of people can have reasons for voting against the current administration from what I can see in the paper, and that's once again just my own opinion, but they probably would be more interested in what can be done about these situations and how these things can be turned around. I just want to briefly say I lived in a community, Park Slope in Brooklyn, where the houses began to become run down and drug dealers and other nefarious types moved into the community, and the values started spiraling down. The taxes were fairly high at the time, and they started a community rehabilitation program, and they went from block to block, and they improved these properties, including the code enforcement, police surveillance, things like that, and sort of watched their investments. Those properties today, which you could almost practically had to give them away back then, you couldn't touch them for less than $1 million or $1.5 million a piece.
Well, I think we're a long way from doing that in Schenectady.
Yes, but they had a plan. They
right.
had a long-term
plan. You're exactly right. There has to be a plan. You can't simply say, for instance, that casino revenues are going to solve our problems. You have to have a plan as to what you're going to do with those revenues. There's a commitment, supposedly, to reduce taxes as a result of the revenues coming through a casino. But what's the plan? What are we going to do to make sure that the people in this community who are homeowners and those who are renters, because they are directly affected by high taxes, will be benefited? What are we doing to make sure that crime is less? What are we doing to make sure education is better? I mean, my background as a lawyer first, but for the last 24 years, or 35 years now, with my Foundation for At-Risk Kids, what are we doing to make it that people will want to come here? With our school systems in difficulty, with crime as an issue, with our neighborhoods crumbling, we have to have a plan. And in the course of these next weeks and months, I'll be putting forward pieces that will address each of these issues.
Those are the kind of answers that I think people out there want. They want to know what can be done, it's after becoming aware of the situation and how and why it makes a difference. Just for example, I believe that high taxes drive down property values.
Absolutely.
And I believe that people need to understand that high taxes actually does not just cost them money in terms of paying taxes, but it costs them equity value in their homes if the values keep going down.
Well, high taxes cost us, but so does crime, and so does the situation in our schools. We have a strong superintendent in the school, we have some great programs in our schools, but we also have the reality of schools that are in distress situations. And so the question is, what are we going to do about it? And the answers are answers which I think are out there, and I'll be putting those forward as we go along.
Good, because we'll be looking for that.
Great.
We want to see some of those answers. A couple of other things that have been in the paper recently that we would like to touch on over here. We did have the woman on last week that was written up by code enforcement for
Wanda Neal.
And so we got a little input from her. And what do you think about code enforcement?
Code enforcement is something that's important. Quality of life issues are tremendously important, but the focus, in my judgment, is reversed. We need to find a way to help the Wanda Neals of this community stay in their homes. We do not need to add to the number of foreclosed properties. We do not need to make it more difficult for people to enjoy living in this city. And so the thing that I am most interested in doing by addressing issues involving crime, by dealing with issues involving education, and by dealing with issues involving the neighborhoods as a whole, is to have a reason both for people to move into this community and to work to make sure that people in this community get to stay here. There was a statement that the mayor made in the article where code enforcement made its sweep, and in which Wanda Neal was said that she needed to have a second railing. He said that he didn't want people in this community who put their own interests above the law. And my answer to that is, I do want people like Wanda Neal in this community who may have been totally unaware of the fact that she needed to have a second rail, and who may need some help in putting that second rail up. And I know that, Donnie Birch has volunteered to put it in there for her. We need to have a different approach. Have enforcement, have an enhanced quality of life, but work with the people who are here so that they are able to stay here. Someone who's been a taxpayer and has maintained her home should not be treated as if she were a criminal.
Well, she was very offended by this, and she explained to us her feelings at the time. We had our group discussion last week, and it goes to that feeling almost like a criminal, to feeling that like a scofflaw or a criminal, because and this is a person who feels that they've paid their taxes and they've done their best, and quite honestly, overall, the house is probably better than most in terms of how it's being kept. Well,
certainly a lot better than the one across the street.
Yeah.
That was also cited. But it's amazing to me how we single out people in a way that is not appropriate. Quality of life, yes. Enforce the laws, yes. But do it with a little sensitivity as the people you're dealing with. And she's not a scofflaw, she's not a criminal, she's a person who's living on a fixed income, and she is maintaining her home, in my mind, in a very good way. Having been in her living room and talked with her after that article to tell her specifically she is the type of person I want in this community. The may or may not, I do.
I think we need more Wanda else in our community.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We have a couple of things that, one of them I have a question of. We haven't discussed this before, but a lot of states and local governments have the ability to put referendums on the ballots from times. I'm not totally familiar with it. I've seen examples of it. I understand that a lot of times when local municipalities get out of touch with their base, with the people, with the needs of the people and so forth, that it's sort of a constitutional right to be able to add an amendment and maybe get a resolution or something repealed in certain cases. And I'd like to look into that some more. I mean, I'd like to, going forward here, not today, but for example, the sales tax agreement. We did a show on that. Actually, you were a guest on a show we did a while back on the sales tax agreement, and which it said by members of the public that the public was getting screwed in the city of Schenectady on this deal. And it could be very complex. Well, that's what I have a problem with here with SAC. We're trying to explain things to the public, trying to bring some of this out there for people to understand. And some of it is very, very complex. How do you take something like the sales tax agreement and explain how it may not have been in the best interest of the city taxpayers, or it could have been negotiated a little bit better on behalf of the city?
Well, I think it's pretty simple. You have 12 miles from here in Albany, the famous three men in the room: the governor, the Speaker of the Assembly, and the Senate Majority Leader. And they're the ones who cut the deals. And in Schenectady, as it turned out with the sales tax agreement, it was two men in the room. It was the mayor, and it was the negotiated on behalf of the county. I'm not here to talk about puppets and who's controlling whom, but it's pretty clear that Chris Gardner, who happens to be the person who was negotiating for the county, is in control of the political party in the county, just as the mayor is in control of the political process for the Democrats in the city. To have those two people trying to work out an agreement which affects all of the people living in Schenectady does not strike me as the right thing. There were three people from the city council negotiating, and the mayor just pulled the authority away from them, and he cut the deal with his political boss.
Now, how should we say this? How do you try to make your local representatives, the people that you vote for and put in office, whatever, how do you make sure that they do the right thing? Where does the public input come in, and how does it happen that if the public disagrees with what action is taken in a case like this, like we mentioned, maybe a referendum to repeal the sales tax agreement or something like that?
Well, you don't need a referendum per se. I would think you would need a change in government because you can make a constitutional argument that the sales tax agreement is deficient simply because it binds to successive legislatures, and that's something that has constitutional implications. So that's more technical perhaps than your listeners want to know, but you have the ability to affect this. The real way you affect it, though, if you're not happy with the way things are being done, is you vote people out on election day.
They can do an awful lot of damage in 3 or 4 years before the next election comes up.
Right. Well, in this case, we have one that's about 5 months away.
Okay. So that's timely. We also have a question about budget transparency, which we had started to discuss the last time. And one of the things there are a lot of things that are going on between the proposed budget and the adopted budget here in the city and what would be considered to be the actual budget or the comprehensive budget. We're taking all the revenues, all the expenditures. It really gives a better picture of what goes on financially from year to year and so forth. And for example, you mentioned to me that it would be a good idea perhaps to have an addendum to a budget that would list all their pilot agreements and show what's specifically happening with regard to the city in those agreements.
When we created Metroplex, and when I say we, let me go back and give a little history. In 1992, I met Neil Golub. I was the president of Union College. I'd come in 1990. I met him through his father, who was a Union alum. And Neil and I hit it off. It was clear that Bill Golub wanted to try and do something for the community. He put $1 million on the table. And he had some ideas as to what he wanted to do. I did some homework and convinced him that that was really not the right way to go. Instead, I suggested that we create something called Schenectady 2000. Two things came out of Schenectady 2000. One is Metroplex, which interestingly, some of the people who opposed us politically are now champions of and say, didn't we do a great job through Metroplex?
Funny how that works.
It is amazing how it works. But the other thing, and the most important thing that came out of Schenectady 2000 is we had a sense of pride in this community and a sense that our best days are truly ahead of us. That's something I'd like to see come back, because there is a feeling in Schenectady that as a result of high taxes, as a result of crumbling neighborhoods, as a result of roads that are a disgrace, which of course will probably all be done by election day, and with schools that are now on lists from the Board of Regents as being distressed, we have real issues. And so the question is, how do we go forward? How do we address it? You have to have an open process. You have to have ideas put forward that are not now being put forward. And that's what this process is all about.
I believe that you touched on what I think personally is the core issue here. I have worked with members of the community from all kinds of groups, Schenectady Inner City Mission, even downtown Schenectady Improvement. We've had, out of the 250 shows over the last couple of years, basically 3 guests on every show. So there's almost 1,000 different representatives of the community that have come and done shows here in the last couple of years. And what I hear from all the community outlying community area people when they come in to do these shows is that sense of pride that you speak of in their community. Not only is a sense of pride kind of absent or diminishing because of the quality of life and the abandoned houses and all the other things that are going to crime and whatever, not only is a sense of pride somewhat diminished, but they don't feel comfortable letting their kids walk down the street. They're worried about, and these are communities, these are where people live, this is where they chose to raise their children and so forth. And this, not only is it not the sense of pride, but we're getting a lot of really worried about core issues of crime and so forth going on in the communities. And that sense of pride that you're talking about is sorely missing from a lot of this.
Right, and you know, going back to the question you asked a moment ago, downtown has a 3-block area that, as a result of what came out of Schenectady 2000 and then Metroplex, has developed. It hasn't done anything for the people in the neighborhoods, though. And what I want to see is us focusing on neighborhoods the way we focused through Metroplex on the 3-block area downtown. The person who lives on Goose Hill, the person who lives on Hamilton Hill, the person who lives in any one of our neighborhoods is not better off because of what took place through Metroplex on State Street. Is State Street better than it was? Yes, it is. Are our neighborhoods better than they were? No, they are not. And so we have to find a way, and I have plenty of ideas to put forward, that we can change our neighborhoods, change our schools, change our crime, because unless we do those things together, and unless we find ourselves with a way of reducing taxes, we're not going to attract people in this community and have it be more vibrant. It is one thing to have a 3-block area downtown that is nice, but tell me how many people living on Goose Hill can afford to go to Aperitivo. Tell me how many people living on Hamilton Hill can afford to eat at Johnny's. And the answer is, I don't think you're going to find very many. So what I want to find is a way to address the issues in our neighborhoods, our schools, crime, and taxes in a way that people will move into this community because they feel it's one where their investment will increase in value. Right now, the investment is decreasing in value. The taxes are the highest in the Capital District, but the values are not only low, they're going lower.
Well, we have, SAC is committed to bringing the information as much as possible. We also invited David Bucco, for example, to come and speak about the projects, like they have the Delisi Group projects in and around the city, including the casino, because there is a problem here. The problem is, and I don't think it's one of perception, but maybe we'll find out more about that next week. And the problem is that taxes have gone up, values have gone down, and hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent on development over the last number of years. And those things don't seem to line up. And so we would like to know, the people that I have coming to shows and what have you, and asking questions, they'd like to know how that type of thing is possible. We also have as a function coming up next Tuesday at 6 o'clock at Arthur's Market down in the Stockade. SAC is having their annual open house sort of meeting, open to membership meeting. And we encourage people to get involved, find out what's going on in the community, find out why it matters, which is where we bring people like you and come in and explain that to a great extent. You know, you read a lot of this, and that's why we call our show Between the Lines. We read a lot of this, but we really don't see how this all works together on all these articles.
Well, you just said something I want to just piggyback on for a second. We all have to work together, not just the few people in power. There's too much power in too few hands for the benefit of too few people. What we need to do is have the people in this community feel that they want not only to live here, but invest in the community by making it a better place. You know, I can cite chapter and verse of people who seek to do that, but we all have to do it. Whether it's in our schools, whether it's making our communities safer, whether it's beautifying what we have, we need to have people develop the sense of pride that came out of Schenectady 2000. And as we go forward in this campaign, I expect that we will have people understanding that they really can point to the future with pride, that this is a place that they're happy to live in because they can see that their investment of time and money is paying off.
Well, you know, I'd like to leave this show with a quote, and I'm going to misquote it terribly, but it's Thomas Jefferson, of course. And, you know, basically, to paraphrase it, when the good people stay home, the politicians and the insiders get to make all the decisions. And I know that's not exactly a Jeffersonian quote, but I'm trying to put it in a current context.
Bad things happen when good people do nothing.
Exactly. And that's why we want to encourage people to come out, to get involved. Difference of opinion we love here at SAC, because that's how you get to the facts.
Well, you know, I've said it to the 4 candidates with whom I'm running, who are running for city council. And I said, we're not going to agree on everything. I don't want us to agree on everything. You know, Vince Riggi and I ran 4 years ago. We're running again now. And, you know, we're joined by Ann Wrigley and Tom Verrett and Mike Cuevas. And, you know, Vince and I agree on most things. We do not agree on everything. We've argued back and forth, and as you know, Vince has strong views, and I tend to hold my ground at times also. So, we go at it every once in a while. That's great. What I find so important and what's so lacking right now is because you have a one-party town, you do not have people challenging things the way they should. And unless you have the competition of ideas, you will never put forward ideas that will truly benefit a community. Whether it's in reducing taxes or improving neighborhoods or reducing crime or making our schools better, we all have to work together. And it's not a question of a few people working together for their benefit. It's all of us working together to make this community better.
And with that, we have in mind here the idea that if you go out, anyone watching this program, and tell 3 other people what's going on in the community, what they've heard, maybe what they've gained from it, or what does it mean, or what we can do about some of the issues that are out there. Be involved, get involved, but tell 3 other people. And if those 3 people told 3 other people, you can start to reach a group of people who can make a change. And anyone can make a change here in the community. So we want to thank you, Roger, for coming down and being a guest once again.
Good.
And I'm sure we'll see you a few more times.
And bring back the pride.
Okay, thank you.